When we met, we knew that we did things differently, but with no regrets, both living life authentically. So we packed up this antique boat to make a life upon the sea. For the worse and for the better, to live a life full of adventure. Living simply on our own, powered by the sea and sky, anchored down to be with friends, anchor up to say goodbye, traveling on the winds of change. We're gonna make it, you and I, enduring winds and stormy weather, to live a life full of adventure. Some days it's easy, other days it's tough, just finding our way and fixing all of our broken stuff. And we don't have many things, but we have enough to live this life together. A life full of adventure. Emily and Clark's adventure. When we met, we knew that we did things differently, but with no regrets, both living life authentically. So we packed up this antique boat to make a life upon the sea. For the worse and for the better, to live a life full of adventure. Living simply on our own, powered by the sea and sky, anchored down to be with friends, anchor up to say goodbye, traveling on the winds of change. We're gonna make it, you and I, enduring winds and stormy weather, to live a life full of adventure. Some days it's easy, other days it's tough, just finding our way and fixing all of our broken stuff. And we don't have many things, but we have enough to live this life together. A life full of adventure. Emily and Clark's Adventure. When we met, we knew that we did things differently, but with no regrets, both living life authentically. So we packed up this antique boat to make a life upon the sea, for the worse and for the better, to live a life full of adventure. Living simply on our own, powered by the sea and sky, anchored down to be with friends, anchor up to say goodbye, traveling on the winds of change. We're gonna make it, you and I, enduring winds and stormy weather, to live a life full of adventure. Some days it's easy, other days it's tough, just finding our way and fixing all of our broken stuff. And we don't have many things, but we have enough to live this life together. A life full of adventure. Emily and Clark's Adventure. When we met, we knew that we did things differently, but with no regrets, both living life authentically. So we packed up this antique boat to make a life upon the sea, for the worse and for the better, to live a life full of adventure. Living simply on our own, powered by the sea and sky, anchored down to be with friends, anchor up to say goodbye, traveling on the winds of change. We're gonna make it, you and I, enduring winds just finding our way and fixing all of our broken stuff. And we don't have many things, but we have enough to live this life together. A life full of adventure. Emily and Clark's adventure. Hello, it's Emily
And Clark.
on sailing vessel Temptress, and I hope our audio and everything is working. Somebody let us know that the audio is coming through. I'll check it here. I'm watching on my phone. Sounds like it's good, so we'll go ahead and get started with our live stream. Welcome to our September live stream. We already have a few questions. If you haven't already, put your questions in the chat box, which is, I think, over there or down there. We'll get our light working here.
Okay,
go.
that's all for us being professional. All right.
Okay, so here we go. We've got some questions today. So let's start with something simple. Let's start with Dave in the UK, who wants to know about depth gauges. Should they be set so that you're seeing the real depth of the water or the depth underneath your keel?
Yeah, oops, this came down. Organize that.
Okay.
It's your boat, you can do it any way you want. But here's the right answer. Okay, set it for the depth of the actual water. You know how deep your boat is, and you'll not forget that. And if you set it for the depth of the actual water, when someone asks you a question of how deep is it in getting into whatever island, you won't be telling them, well, it's 4 feet under my keel and my keel is blah, blah. You'll be answering it naturally in it's 8 feet of water. Mm-hmm. And life is easier if we all talk about how deep the water is, not how deep it is relative to some boat that went through last Thursday. So that's my opinion, but it's your boat and you can set it up any way you want.
Yeah, and if you have an opinion about that, feel free to put it in the comments. Okay?
Also, I do it by the depth of the water because Temptress can be 5.5 feet deep or 11 or 10.5 feet deep.
Right.
So I want to know how deep the water is.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, JD. So this is a little more involved question. So, hi there, I'm 58 in reasonable health and have a $100,000, I presume, savings or investment, plus $1,500 a month income stream. I'd like to solo sail and buy a 30-footer, probably in reverse order. Can this be done?
Anything can be done. Oh, Jesus.
Go ahead, I'll take care of it.
You sort that. Well, the 100,000 might scare me a bit. It's kind of short for after sailing. The actual sailing part, especially if you got a smallish boat, if you're alone and you're on kind of a budget, that's $1,500 a month. It seems comfortable, even saving some to do maintenance and stuff, because smaller boats don't cost as much for the bits. You might not be buying as much diesel. You might might have to curtail. But I know people who've done this life on $500 a month, so it's all doing. We do it on kind of 1,000, and there's 2 of us, so that's a thing. And Temptress is a bigger boat.
Bigger boat. And we were just saying a 30-foot boat seems to be a boat that gets bought and sold a lot, so there should be a lot out there. You mentioned what kind of
Cape
boat?
Dory, I think.
Cape Dory.
You said,
yeah.
Which I think are good, solid boats. That's the part that bothers me. If the $100,000 is what you are going to buy the boat with, you won't have a lot of nest egg. It would bother me. Everybody has their own tolerance for risk, and people say that my risk tolerance is pretty high. But personally, once I put whatever I had to put in to buy a boat and get it ready to go, the amount I had left over, I'd be worried re-landing back in the United States, for example, on that for the rest of my life. It just seems a little short to me, but I'm going to just end it with anybody can do anything they want. And I believe the average amount of money people have at retirement in the United States is $20,000, which is kind of pathetic. It means they never saved throughout their life, in my opinion. So, they're surviving somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if that includes assets like houses and cars. And
No, it's like
that.
the total nest egg
net
at
worth?
retirement.
Yeah.
And that was a few years ago, of course, so maybe it's 30 now.
Irregular Pineapples from Finland, one of our patrons.
Oh, thanks.
they were replying to JD saying solo sailing is tricky, though, especially docking. Make sure you got an autopilot. Also, it's very tiring to sail from A to B. That can take 4 to 10 hours as a solo sailor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I've gone 2 years before sailing solo, and it's the lack of sleep. That's the real thing. Just gets, when you do long crossings, staying up for 35 hours is tough.
Mm-hmm. And this kind of question, it's hard to do in a chat when we have limited information. I don't know if you're one of our patrons, JD, but if you hop over there and send us a message there, we might be able to give you a little bit more personal one-on-one advice.
Kind of needs
thoughts.
a back and forth.
Yeah, definitely needs some more back and forth, but we're happy to talk to you about that. Clark's been doing that a lot lately with several of our patrons.
Mm-hmm.
Another question from Dave in the UK. Question on engine alternator. On a yacht, do you have an ignition light the same as a car to indicate if the alternator is not charging?
Well, it's the same alternator, and you can hook it up to do that. I like having an amp meter myself. Do I do that? I guess no. I think maybe the Yanmar panel actually has one on it, but the panel out in the cockpit, I don't have anything like that. Is it even important? I mean, you're looking at your volts, and if your volts are up high, and you kind of get to know your boat, you know it's charging. And I think that's the most important gauge to have, really, would be volts. Amp meter is more to diagnose something. So if but an idiot light, I just don't really see the need. It's not like if your amp meter died in a car, or if your idiot light came out in your car, you kind of have to pull over, especially at night if your lights are on. It's a gas engine. Eventually your battery's going to go dead, and you're dead. This is a boat. You got big house batteries. The diesel doesn't use any electricity at all. So, oh darn, that's not working. I guess we'll finish this crossing and deal with that sometime. It's just not the same level of urgency because your power can come from other sources.
Okay. Here's a question that you are very qualified to answer.
I am?
Yes. This person, Hyperfilm Prod, don't know the first name, sorry. Learning to sail on Lake Ontario, what are the biggest differences between lake and ocean sailing, or are they completely unrelated, LOL?
Okay. Well, the water tastes better in Lake Ontario. And it's harder to swim in it because you sink. The salt water is more buoyant. But the big thing is waves, and usually Lake Ontario is pretty flat, at least when I would go out in it. The problem with Lake Ontario, it's quite shallow, and when the wind kicks up really strong with a thunderstorm or something, in very short order you can get really steep, nasty Gordon Lightfoot type waves. It can get bad. The ocean takes a while to build up, so you don't get hit with such a scary emergency kind of wave. You kind of know it's coming from the forecast, but it can really pile up. And here in the Caribbean, you get these short frequency waves, which make going upwind really difficult. The Pacific, for example, it can have huge waves. I sailed to Hawaii once, and we had 25-foot seas the whole way. I'm serious. And they weren't that bad. I mean, it caused the boat to broach because it was a bad boat to do the crossing with. But it's like really slow tide. They just go up and they go down. With Temptress, when I sailed down the west coast of the U.S. and Mexico and all that, the waves were very often of such a low frequency that you didn't even know they were waves. It didn't affect the boat's speed or anything at all. So anything can happen in the ocean. I guess I'm just saying, in general, the Pacific seems to be longer waves, and the Caribbean seems to be short chop, more like Lake Ontario.
So did you get to watch the sunset over and
yeah
over?
Yeah, we're watching for the green flash, as one does, and it's like, the sun's gone, and then you go up, I get to see it again, down, up, and one of those times I saw a green flash.
So I wouldn't have guessed that. So you think sailing on a lake is actually more wavy, more, would you say it's more treacherous than ocean sailing?
Lake.
Is it a good training wheels, so to speak, for ocean sailing, or what?
Well, it's a big body of water, so you get all that kind of experience. Yeah, it was great training for me. My first displacement hull, 25-foot Coronado, was on Lake Ontario, and I if you have 100 hours there, it's it's not like, I mean, it still counts as 100 hours of big boat sailing on a big piece of water. It's the same thing. No tides to worry about. Currents aren't as much of a problem, but you just deal with those things. And the barnacles don't grow.
Okay, Chris love your aluminum tender. Do you see many of them out and about? Although heavier, it seems like their cost comparative, more resilient, and easier to maintain. I don't know if that's heavier.
Well,
lighter than a lot of
no, it's lighter than a lot. Ours is. I'll get into that in a minute. I think the number of other aluminum tenders is so close to zero.
Right.
I think I've seen one other guy with one. We had a friend that brought one out because we suggested it, so I don't think that counts. For the longest time, I had what was it called? Alumacraft 12-footer. And I really liked it. It was 50 years old, and it was wearing out. So we got this new one, and we decided to go up to the Lund, which weighs 200 pounds. The Alumacraft weighs like 125. They still make it. But if you look at that Alumacraft or the Lund we have, and look how the seats are in the back, how the flotation chambers go all the way back to the transom, I think that's vitally important, and those are the two best candidates. Honestly, if I had it to do, I like the Lund, and it's solid, and I'll probably pass it on to somebody when I'm done with it. It looks tough. All these stories about them in Alaska and stuff. I'm sure it is going to, and I wanted something tough because it's going out for a while. But I think if I had it to do again, I would get the Alumacraft. It's lighter, it's cheaper, and it's flatter in the bottom. So the Lund is better when you get bouncing into waves. It cuts in better, but it takes more power to get it up on plane, where the Alumacraft was actually just fine.
Yeah,
I think it was just about the optimal dinghy. So if I could talk to 2 year ago Clark, I'd say get the Alumacraft.
Maybe after the live stream, we could put links to both of those, the model that we have and the model that you like. We'll put it in the description down below in case. Anyways,
they're easy to find.
Okay,
yeah, the models.
Yeah,
that's good. The
one.
models. Yeah, we don't get to. Yeah, if they wanted to set up an affiliate link, I'm all for it. But no, we don't.
No, we won't get any money from it, but it'll help you out. There's a lot of inflatable dinghies that are much heavier than 200 pounds, though, aren't they?
Well, there are those fiberglass bottom, double bottom things.
That's what I'm thinking of, which a lot of people have out here.
But I wouldn't get one of those. The aluminum bottom ones that are light, they're probably comparable to the heavier dinghy, but I think they're heavier than the lighter dinghy. I might stand, and I'm talking about with real Hapalon, not the PVC stuff that lasts a couple years. But I'm not going back. I've had hard dinghies for too long now. It's easier to get into them. It's easier to bash them up against the dock and not even worry about it. Don't worry about barnacles cutting it. Just like no worries. And I don't want to go back to have to worry about tearing my boat.
But yeah, to answer your question, there's hardly any of them out here.
Yeah.
And but whenever we come up to a dock, people say, "Oh, that's great! I ought to get one of those," and then they never do, because they've already bought their other one.
Yeah.
Hi to Darren and Jessa. I just realized I think I mistyped your name in our patron list here and in our past videos. I think I wrote Darren and Jessica, so I apologize for that, Darren and Jessa. Just joined a Patreon. Not really a question there. Watt would like to know. I'd like to ask Clark if he has considered absorption refrigeration for AC. It's a purely resistive load rather than an inductive one, and there are also no losses due to friction.
Yep. It's not very efficient at all. If you were going to use absorption cycle, to everybody else out there, that's like what you kind of see in campers for camper fridges, the ammonia system, where they can be propane or if you were going to burn propane or something that made heat directly, that is the only way to go. But for electricity, no. Making heat and then running it through an absorption cycle, you would lose so much. And also, ammonia on a boat. I've already had that last week. I don't want to have ammonia leak on the boat again.
That was not
bad.
Pleasant.
No, it wouldn't be so bad. There wouldn't be that much. I don't know. It's pure ammonia, though, so... Anyway, that's how they work inside. It's hydrogen and ammonia, I believe, are the main working gases.
Linda in northern New York wants to know when we're coming home.
Hi, Mom!
When are we going home? When are we going back to the States?
We have nothing planned.
Nothing planned yet. We'll have to see what the travel restrictions are like, and
Hi, Dad.
all the normal stuff. But we have talked about occasionally about maybe in Panama we'll put the boat in a marina. And
Yeah, in fact, we're starting to get a little bit popular, and Emily did that, the dinghy build that she hadn't finished yet, but that dinghy build set of videos. We've been asked by a couple different people, hey, do you do boat shows?
if they are going on right now, I don't know.
Yeah, but whenever there's boat shows again, I think in the next season of boat shows, someone wanted to pay our plane ticket. I think it'd be fun to meet people, and if we got a free ride, do it. And
Go up that way.
I'd like to, they have guys talk about stuff. I think if I did that, basically that refrigeration video I did, how refrigeration works, I think that would be a great talk.
You're a guy and you can talk about stuff. Let's see. Why is the toilet called a head?
Okay, I know that. Okay.
Trivia time.
Okay, up at the front of a boat, an old boat, square rigger and stuff, there's the part of the boat, where the sprit comes out, where the bowsprit comes out. It's called the heads of the boat. And on a big ship, they would be like grating, with holes in it. Well, if you had to relieve yourself, you went to the head. So it became their euphemism. I have to go to the head. So they'd be in a bar on land and say, I got to go to the head. But anyway, that's how it became the head.
All right. No. Brian says, I recently spoke with another sailor who has old starter cables with clamps cut and attaches to the bow and stern shrouds into the water, allowing current to have a path. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a path, and if you did get hit by lightning and the lightning happened to want to follow that path, it would get it outside your boat. What I don't like about it, well, it's clamped on, so, clamp and then try to run some amps through something, corrosion in saltwater environment. I don't know that I would trust the connection. I mean, physically it's not going to fall off, but is it still making a good connection? Second off, something hit the rig every time. You might just forget to rig it. Growth. The part of it that's in the water, if it's in certain places, no big deal. Other places it can just really get all barnacled up and everything, and it's a pain to deal with. I like a system that's part of the boat and I can just forget about it. So with my system, I've done crossing where lightning is popping right off around me. I remember one where I was standing in the cockpit and this lightning hit I don't know, but it was really close to me in the water, and I threw myself flat on the deck, and then I just started laughing at myself. That's traveling at almost the speed of light, I could get out of its way. So I just stood up for the rest of the time. But I still had that feeling that I was connected to the ocean properly. I still had all the paths, where if I had jumper cables dangling beside the boat as I was sailing, I wouldn't. And
or if you're getting ready to hook them up,
yeah,
and do a Doc Brown
Frankenstein, yeah. So I think you should do it in a right way that you can then forget about, and then you can just only think about it when it's lightning and say, well, I've done everything I can do. Mm-hmm. There's a nice feeling of I've done what I think I can do.
So this is just a tiny little minor question. Mike H says, I would love to do what you have done. Where would you suggest I start to learn all the things I need to be able to live on and sail a boat?
Jeez, if there was only a YouTube channel or something that talked about these things.
Well, so you are usually a big advocate for good old-fashioned books, though, too.
Yeah.
It's hard on YouTube to get a full curriculum of everything that you need to know.
I don't even know if anybody's publishing books anymore, but there are lots of old books on this subject.
Are there any you can recommend?
Well, personally, I think if you're going to buy a boat, I tell everybody, read Eric Hiscock's book, Cruising Under Sail. I read that before I bought Temptress, and it had a lot to do with why I chose Temptress. So I think that's a good book.
Is he the one with that documentary?
Yeah. Yeah, if you get to see their documentary, something westward something, I don't know. But he and his wife sailed around the world, and someone supplied him with a 16mm camera and a bunch of film. And he filmed the whole thing, and the thing that amazes me, it's a good little documentary thing, but at the end, between what he shot and what is in the video, he wasted 5%. I mean, it was just every shot was worked out, every frame was used.
Yeah.
And they just really put a lot of effort into doing it well. And then they're British, so they make it look like they weren't really trying.
And it's very British and polite. And very
They would do things like they were filming raising a sail, so they would film and raise the sail with the winch. I'm pointing at my mesh. You guys can't see it. And wind the winch. And then they wanted to reverse angle. So they'd wait till the evening when the sun was on the other side and do it over again.
Yeah. It's like having a YouTube channel.
Yeah, yeah. Except we can waste film.
You think you've shot the whole thing in one day, but it's really over a course of things.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, sometimes I change to a different shirt and try to hide it.
Let's see. Somebody replied to Brian, who I've lost track of what his thing. Oh, with the cable. Somebody said, from what I understand, it's the length of the connection to Earth that's important, which is why people have spider Earths.
Okay. I would assume that's like, well, we kind of, if that's what I think it is, we've kind of got this going on here where we've all that copper strapping, and since it's going everywhere, we get, I want to jump to the end of what I'm trying to say, but that gives you that. The other thing that's really great about having all that is when you use it as the counterpoise for your high frequency antenna, for your ham or single sideband, you get all these various lengths to the paths. And if you look at how people do random wire antennas on land, they tend to bury lots of wires of different lengths. And we kind of get that. And honestly, I've always kind of figured one of the reasons I have good output and reception is because of all that copper strapping. But it's part of the lightning system, technically.
Okay.
Also, I didn't know what I was doing, so I hooked it up to that, and then I put a dynaplate on, and then I hooked it to the engine and the propeller, and then I put a bunch of bronze window screen all under the decks of the lazarettes and hooked that in, and so I just got like 20 pounds of metal spread all over the place.
Let's see. Irregular pineapples in Finland, I believe. Question. Engine warning siren goes down to about 10% volume. Warning lights turn off completely, though the lights still work. This happened for about a week, then it went away. Corrosion? Suggestions?
Yeah, you got some corrosion and low voltage. That's it going down. Let me think how that works. Most all of your alarms, like let's just talk about one of them, your oil pressure sender. When the oil pressure goes low, it makes a contact to ground. So you could have the wire coming from your alarm somewhere making a contact to ground. So like where that plugs on, and this could be that or the water temperature sensor or what all else you've got. Sometimes the transmission has alarms too. If there were a path that went to ground with a lot of resistance, that could cause that. Anyway, pop that off. Take the wire off one of the sensors. Just hold it right with the engine switch on. Engine not running. And touch that right to the... take the one... Okay, I'm saying this all backwards. I'm sorry. The oil pressure runs the other way. So pop it off your oil pressure so that the alarm goes away. And then you can touch that to the engine block and you should hear it come on nice and long and loud. Otherwise, one of your senders, hopefully in the good mode, not too hot or lots of good pressure, somehow has probably got a small path of electrons to it. And you can check that with an amp meter when the engine's in its right state. So do it with the temperature first and then start the engine up and check your oil pressure one.
Okay.
Sorry, I rambled on that.
And if that doesn't answer your question, you know how to reach us on Patreon.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll
we should put the Toronto Boat Show on our list.
That's right across the lake from where I grew up, and my mom would be very happy.
Yeah. John says he's just dropping in to say hello, but he's got to go do laundry, so thanks for dropping in. Boring question from Hyperfilm Prod again. Markets seem overpriced these days. Would you recommend being somewhat in cash or fully invested these days?
The markets are wildly overpriced right now, but there's a reason for it. And the reason for it is I think there's going to be a big inflation hit on cash, and I think most of the money out there thinks the same thing. So if you're staying in cash, don't stay in cash. Get it into something that has a value that isn't pieces of paper. Market is the easiest thing, but I mean, it could be anything. Hell, buy baseball cards. I don't think you want to be in cash right now. The real smart money right now would be to get into debt, because if you truly believe the inflation's going to happen, if you take a great debt that you know
pay off,
that you got something valuable out of. Let's say you borrowed $100,000 to buy some property.
Does a boat count?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Buy a boat. No, seriously, if you bought a boat right now for $100,000, and then let's say over the next 10 years we have huge inflation, you're now living in a world where $100,000 is like $10,000 now. So you basically bought the boat for $10,000.
And more people might want to get on a boat and get the heck away from wherever they are.
Well, the whole world's tied together.
Yeah,
If things go bad, it goes bad all over. But, it's easier to tighten your belt out here.
So, to answer the question, would you recommend being somewhat in cash or fully invested? You say
Yeah.
fully invested, but not necessarily in the market? Just in
In
something that's not cash.
in something that boils down to value that isn't money. Don't even the bond market, that's still money. Put it into something like, well, if you put it in stocks, you're buying a bunch of, say, Coca-Cola. And as long as you think Coca-Cola is going to still stay as an entity and they're going to be selling $10 Coca-Colas in the future, you're now part of that stream that's still selling Coca-Colas. But if you keep it in cash, you're going to be able to afford a Coca-Cola with it.
Yeah. We're not saying buy Coca-Cola. We're
No.
just giving that as an example. If you have not seen our Power of a Dollar video, go check that out, because that kind of explains why, if you have a dollar and you save it, what's going to happen to it in 30 years, and the value is actually going to, in the long term, if inflation goes up, the value is actually going to go down, and you're going to have less if you put it in your mattress
Sure.
than if you do something
From that
with
point of
it.
view, it's good. I think it's particularly bad inflation right now, so
Yeah.
that's even more important now. But
Yeah.
the question more directly was, do you buy into the market now? If I'm so glad I'm already placed in the market, so my stuff's been going up, and that's great. And if it comes back down later, it'll still be fine. Do you buy in now? I don't know, because it's gone up, kind of based on what people that and I'm not talking people. I'm talking the Warren Buffett's type people that really move a lot of money, feel is the right amount that it's worth, and it's probably already kind of topped up now. So, I mean, baseball cards might not be ridiculous, but a boat is always a smart idea. You save
Disclaimer.
so much money. It's just they never take anything to keep alive.
That's true. Cost of living
No.
goes down. But
No,
yeah,
boats
they
are the dumbest thing you can invest in.
To buy and repair and everything.
But if you need one, then buy it now. And I need it.
Disclaimer: we are not financial advisors, and you should do your own research before taking any of our advice. Let's see. I'm just seeing you two live for the first time, and just wanted to say I'm absolutely in love with your videos. Thank you so much. They inspire me in many aspects. I found your channel after I was sailing. That's from Rebecca. Sailing on the Baltic Sea for a week, and this gave me a taste for more. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Yeah. Eli, or Ellie, in the Wolverine State. A lot of people around here get captain's license by volunteering in the Coast Guard.
Well, a captain's license, yeah, you could do that. If you want a captain's license, I never gotten one. I kind of figured if something actually happened and I had to go to court, they would say that I'm a professional captain, and then I would get attacked more by the it
So it's
just
like getting
seemed
your
better
CPR
not having
license,
one.
then if you don't do it, you're liable?
Yeah, except there are what's it called? Good Samaritan laws that protect you for that, but there aren't,
Gotcha.
good professional laws. So I've never gotten one. But here's the trick with a captain's license: you got to get your eyes, clear enough to see. You can use LASIK for that. You need to pass a government test, and any government test. Don't even try. If you just want to pass the test, don't even understand it. Just they give you all the questions. Just read through all the questions until they're just familiar. You don't even have to understand it. If it's this question, it's B. And once you read through them 20 times, you'll get 75% of them right just from memory. And then the final thing, and the only thing that really matters, and the only thing that's hard to do, is number of days on the water.
The experience part.
And you need to have so many days on the water for the 6-pack, which is actually called Master of Uninspected Vessel or something like that. And then the next one up is usually 100 ton, which most people get if they want to do the sailboat thing. Oh, you know that boat we delivered back? Not that we
Yeah.
used a license for it. Dale's boat was
No,
no, it was
yeah.
100,000
I
pounds,
mean,
not 100 tons.
Gill's boat.
Gill's boat, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was 100,000 pounds, not 100 tons. So we
Right,
could
right,
have
right.
gone like, much bigger than
Much
that.
bigger. Rebecca says she does have one question as well. Do you think housing and land prices will ever drop again in our lifetime?
Oh, geez, never. No, land goes up forever. It just always does. It'll have little dips and stuff, but don't let that bother you because inflation goes up too. It all goes up.
And population goes up, yeah. People,
Yeah, I mean, if you're like in Japan or one of these places where New York City, just don't live there. But there's always going to be some reasonably priced land because the inflation kind of evens that out. But if you need to live in a megalopolis, you're going to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not my expertise. Yeah. What do I know about land? When's the last time I touched land?
On Temptress, do you practice the man overboard drill?
No. No. Should.
Should we? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I was thinking about this the other day. I saw a video on Facebook of like a 10-year-old doing the man overboard drill, and I felt really bad that we should probably
I have something I want to talk about there. So you know those life slings, those cases on the back of the boat that have this harness you put on, and you throw it out behind your boat, and you go around them, kind of like picking up a water skier with your ski rope. Well, I met somebody up in Seattle that had to use one to get somebody back aboard the boat in the Strait of Juan de Fuca with nasty waves and everything, and in 50-degree water, so he's in a hurry. And he told me something afterwards, and he did it to his boat. We've done it to this boat. Now, this thing comes, and it worked just great. And he went around them, and they got the rope, they put it on, they pulled him up to the boat, and they pulled him, pulling him up. And the woman in the water started bashing her head against the side of the hull. He thought he was going to kill her, saving her. And he said, well, I've got a bicycle helmet, a foam bicycle helmet. So on our suspender out there in the box is my old foam bicycle helmet just strapped on there. And if you were to fall in the water off Temptress and I picked you up with the suspender, I'll get you 10 feet away. And then I say, okay, put the helmet on, if it was a rough day. I think it's a perfectly cool safety idea that doesn't hurt a thing, doesn't cost anything. And anyway, I learned from that guy.
All right.
And then we had a bicycle helmet, and we've been kind of using it on motorcycles here because it's better than nothing.
Yeah. So there's your Clark's boat hat for the day.
What was that guy's name? I can't
I
remember
don't
now.
I certainly don't know. So speaking of safety, one of the things we talked about in our last live video, and it's come up a little bit in between, is there's so much stuff about what do you take when you go sailing? How do you prep your boat to go sailing? And something we've been talking about and making lists for is a series of videos. I don't know if it's going to be called Packing Up the Boat or something like that, but take one video and just talk about food, like how do we provision, what do we decide, how do we decide what to take and what not to take. We could do one for tools. I know a few people have been asking about what tools do we have aboard, so we could do one episode just on tools, we could do one on medical, I think we could do one on safety, and with your hacks and other things like how does an EPIRB work, do you need a life raft, all those sorts of things. So if you like that idea, tell us in the comments. Let us know what you think of that idea. When are you going to sail to Scotland?
When it gets warm there.
I think we would fly to Scotland.
Yeah.
If we were going to go to Scotland.
Film the palm trees growing on the beach, and we'll be there.
Yeah, let us know.
I like Scotch.
Darren and Jessa just sent us $5. Thank you, Darren. They already support us on Patreon, so that's super nice. Adding a second 200 amp hour lithium battery. No room to put them together. Second is 13 feet away using a 2 AWG. What is AWG?
American wire gauge.
American wire gauge. Yeah, of course. Okay. Will distance affect the balance from the solar panel?
What you normally want to do for that kind of thing is, like, if you got two batteries, and let my thumbs be the positive terminals and my little fingers here be the negative terminals. You would take the ship's line and go to this guy's negative and go to this guy's positive and then jump between them. That way, they both kind of see the same flow, where if you run the ship's wires to the negative and positive one battery and then go from that to the other battery, you end up with a situation where this guy's always seeing a lower volt on charge and a higher volt on discharge. So he's different and they get out of balance. So I can't tell if it's practical in your application to do that, but that would solve that problem completely. Haven't thought about this, but I'm thinking Right. I mean, without, I haven't done the math in my head or anything. This is just thinking. But with the really low resistance that lithium have, they probably are less susceptible to this kind of thing than lead is. So I don't think I'd sweat it all that much. Also, the size of the cable is a function of how big your charge and your discharge loads are. If you were only going to run 1 amp into or out of these things, you could use itty bitty little wire. It's not like a joining thing so much. It's the amp flow.
Mm-hmm. Joe, you asked a question. You said BTC question mark, ETH question mark. Do you know what that means? I asked him for some context. You just wrote BTC question mark, ETH question mark. Do you recognize those acronyms?
No, I need full sentences because I'm stupid.
Give some context. But we'll answer that. Brian's back. Brass, copper through hulls, or the new composite ones. I'm looking at replacing old ones.
Well, I like bronze because I like bronze. Brass, forget about it. You don't use brass. And some of the bronze ones have brass parts in them, so you have to make sure that you get good ones. But that glass reinforced nylon stuff, Marinel or Marlon or whatever, but it's the black plastic stuff. God, that stuff is tough. My ex-wife had a little boat, and I changed a through hull in that boat, and I'm beating on it with a 4-pound hammer. I would have completely destroyed bronze, and I ended up having to plug the hole with wood so I could use a hole saw to drill it out. I have great respect for that stuff, and you never have to worry about it corroding or losing its zinc or anything. So I think that is fine. On Temptress we use bronze, but we use weird ones that are like ship ones that bolt in with bolts through the hull, and they're all inside. But that's non-standard, and they're indestructible.
On this boat already, so.
Yeah.
So it matches.
Yeah, it's really
That's
important.
the important part.
If you do bronze, in my opinion, don't bond them. The ABYC, whatever, of official what you do to boats to get insurance and everything is going to say bond them. We disagree. I feel that if you're in a marina ever with somebody that's putting some AC in the water because they didn't know how to wire their cord, which happens all the time, you get an electrical difference between those two, and they're separated by space, so that's why there's a difference. And if you bond them, one of them will become sacrificial and lose its sinks really damn fast, like in a couple weeks maybe. So it's just too important that they can't break. And then the final thing I had to say about through hulls, if you have bronze through hulls, this is what you do. Every time you haul out, you get a big stout hammer, not a carpentry hammer, a hammer.
A BFH.
A BFH. And you give them don't try to break them, but don't try to dent them. But they're strong. Give them a good whack. If you can break them, you go, score. Today's the day I want it to break. You shouldn't be able to break them. And sometimes they break off of the tailpiece. Sometimes the bolts break, and sometimes it itself could crack. But when you're out, that's when it's easy to replace them. I've had them fail when I'm in the water, and I tell you, you don't want that to happen.
Okay. That was a thorough look at through. Would you
ask a stupid question?
To the future sailing JJ asks, would you consider an electric engine like Ocean Volt?
Personally, I wouldn't use anybody's product. I would build my own because I'm Clark, and I think it would be really cool. When I bought Temptress 30 some years ago, I said, when that engine fails, I'm putting an electric motor in this boat. Well, I'm on my third motor. It just isn't practical for my needs. I love the idea. And it kind of works for really big boats, and it kind of works for really small boats, but this size, it doesn't work so well. We don't use the engine very much, but when we do use it very often, we run it for 30 hours at full speed. So you just can't do that with electricity. If I was a little more hardcore sailor, or I trusted that I didn't need to have these long crossings occasionally. Like getting here, we lost our mainsail. If we had an electric motor, we would have had to go all the way back to the U.S. downwind to avoid that hurricane. So I'm glad that we have the diesel.
Power.
Yeah, and 140 gallons worth of diesel fuel, that gives you a lot of range.
Mm-hmm.
Until there's nuclear, nothing's like chemistry for holding power.
BTC equals Bitcoin Ethereum.
Okay.
Just question mark.
Yeah. They seem to be doing really well. I think
as
it's a really cool
as
idea.
An inflation hedge.
Interesting. There's so much I don't know about. I know more technically about Bitcoin. I've never owned one. Some guys were that I used to work with were making an ASIC, an integrated circuit that was going to do Bitcoin mining, and they were using new technology, so it was going to be the fastest one. And I was going to do the software for it. And I kind of got the software together, but somebody else got ahead of us and made one with the same technology first. So they had funding, they had everything. So it went bust. But I did a lot of research into like technically what's going on with them. But I've never owned them. I'm thinking about, what's it called? That other thing that's not YouTube.
Library.
Yeah, library and
LBRY.
and then the front end for it. I forget the name right now. I'll tell you how committed I am. But I'm thinking about maybe putting some of our videos over there. And I know they have the
Bitcoin.
A Bitcoiny kind of currency on their system that, even though it's backed by nothing, it's actually inflating. So, sounds like it might be a good idea.
Ken says, have you guys managed your risk in your portfolio? It appears that a major correction may be underway. Your thoughts? $AMC ?
Buy an indexed fund, and that's it. Just buy it and hold it. It'll go up, it'll go down. If it goes down, it'll likely go back up. I've been through a bunch of crashes. It could be bad. I think this one's going to be a little more inflation than it is going to be market correction, but it could be. If the inflation doesn't happen, expect the market to come down because people will be selling. They don't really want to be in the market. But if the inflation happens, it's just going to suck for everybody. But you buy and you hold. That's what I do.
And there have been studies that show that that's...
Yeah, but the studies came out 20 years after I did it. So, me.
Yeah, paying somebody else to do it or trying to day trade yourself might be fun. You want some play money, but long term it's not any better than...
Yeah, if you want to know what I think you should buy, go watch the middle of the 3 videos on how to open a Schwab account and all that. The middle one is where I talk about what I choose, and that's all. Go watch that.
Yeah, it's super simple.
Yeah,
it's
really
not
is.
difficult.
But my criteria is described there, like in one sentence.
But we don't have any gold buried anywhere or anything like that.
No.
Any of that stuff. So...
I know where there's a gold mine in Alaska.
We
got
do.
that
We
map
have
right
a
over
map
there.
somewhere. If we ever get to Alaska. What happened to Emily's lithium battery pack? It's right there.
It's right there. It's right behind the computer.
You're going to show that to them?
Well,
Is
it's
it all
wired
hooked
up.
He's working on the...
I'm working on the BBMS, and maybe I can grab part of it.
Scene change.
I can take this off safely enough.
Odyssey.
It's right here.
Da-da-da.
And I just took the wing nut off this. It's got a couple wing nuts that come through the case, and it's live right now, so I'm going to turn it off. But it's got these lithium batteries. Oops, I'm sorry. It has a little space here she could put, technically her lunch, but it's really for the handheld radio. And that switch, I'm using the camera, that switch right there, circuit breaker. Under that is the BMS. Anyway,
it works.
It's got a whole bunch of power, and we take an inverter. We run the PA for our band and do practices at an old yacht club. That's it's the disaster of a build, and it brings us power. It powers the dinghy around. So we've never run it dead. It just lasts and lasts and lasts. The inverter also I can use like a hand sander or something on shore. It's pretty handy. And what I've been using it for lately is it's sitting on the table behind the computer here. This computer we're using is actually the one I'm writing the software for. And I have a whole little lab set up with that BBMS. And I take the ship's batteries and charge this with that and make sure, to do all the tests and stuff. So this is just my little lithium battery. There's another thing I'm going to work on once I finish this last thing with the BBMS that will allow this to be hooked directly to the ship's batteries even when it's discharged. And then it charges it under control, so it only charges with 10 amps until it becomes fully charged. And then automatically it flips over and it actually parallels into the ship's batteries. So in short, you just take this off and you go out and use the dinghy or whatever you want to use it for. And you come back and just hook it back up and say go. And eventually when it's safe, it locks it in. And then all night, instead of having 200 amp hours of lithium, we have 250.
And when he says BBMS, that's our new word our new acronym for the Battery Bank Management System, which will be the board that he's programming and designing that will help you combine lithium and lead batteries in a smart way that manages everything.
Oh, thanks to all you guys have been talking about my back and my general health. I'm feeling a lot better. The cough is actually just like 2 minutes before this went on. Emily made some curry, and I kind of breathed it in because I guess I was stressed about this. So this isn't cough from being sick. This is cough because I put curry down my throat. And my back is feeling great today. I've been doing push-ups.
Yeah, yes. Very good. Just hello. I just got to see your little dance again because it's our
It's slightly delayed.
Let's see. Have you put the dragon back up? Yeah, the dragon wing awning is back up. It's up all the time, unless we have severe weather expected, which we did last time in our live stream, which is why we were super sweaty and in the aft cabin.
Yeah, I mean that's a video we'll do sometime, but we always have something going on. It seems really busy, and that's a big commitment to do that particular video. It's great though. I've been using this awning since I developed it back in the 90s. It's the third cloth over it. It's great. When we were sick in bed with COVID, it was blowing 25 knots every afternoon here.
Yeah, no worries.
And I just forgot about it. It was fine. Like, 2 months later, I popped my head out and it's still fine.
Speaking of the awning, if you're one of the patrons who sent us your boat measurements, or who was going to send us your boat measurements, poke us. Send us a message to remind us that we were going to make that video, and then we can put that on the list.
Well, the video should be made, but I don't know when we're ready.
Yeah,
I want to do so many other ones. I got a video in mind right now I'm cooking up that is how, this is all about that hybrid battery system. You got your lead and your lithium, you bring them together. Well, after I made that video, I realized that they aren't being charged optimally. And then I got really researching it, and I realized nobody's charging lithium properly. Like, you can't even buy a charger, general purpose charger that does what most aficionados say is right. And there's a reason for it. It's to sell batteries and it's to sell chargers. And since nobody's ever done it, like if you're the battery company, I'm not saying they're trying to ruin batteries. I'm saying that since there are no chargers, they don't demand that you charge properly, because then you won't buy their battery because you can't charge it properly. Well, my little device is going to sort of charge them properly if you buy the kind of the advanced version. And the simple version will charge them like the battery companies say to charge them, and a little better. So this might be the safest way to charge lithium, regardless if you believe about mixing the systems. But it requires there be lead, so you can't get away with lead. You still need your starter batteries as a minimum, in my opinion.
Ken says he watched the video, I think, on how to open a Schwab account. Opened a Schwab account shortly afterwards. That's why I asked. Thanks for the video content and inspiring me to start investing. Cheers. And Chris replies, I think Clark inspired many people to start to invest. Will you give news from your investments?
Well, look at that
works.
video. Take a look at what we buy in that video. That's actually what we own for the most part. Then go look at its track record, and there you go. You'll have it day by day, hour by hour. You'll know before I know.
Yeah, it's not complicated. I mean, that was one of those videos where we thought, is this even a video that anybody would watch? Because it's such a simple thing. Like, here's how you sign up to open a Schwab account. Go to schwab.com.
Oh, it's terrifying for people.
It is terrifying for people, and I'm glad. I think we've gotten a lot of good feedback from the people that they've watched that video and said, is that really all I have to do? I can do this in 15 minutes, and they've done it. And, the sooner you can do it, the better. And in a month,
the pros out there are kind of letting you believe it's impossible.
Yeah, it's not.
So you pay people money to do it for you, but it's just not hard. The Schwabs of the world want to make it really easy for you.
Yeah, and it's scary to a lot of people, and it doesn't have to be scary. People like to pay other people to manage their money because they feel like then if something bad happens, they have somebody else that they can blame for it. But it's, like you said, if you manage your risk and you do it in a big fund that has lots of teeny bits of everything, the risk is going to be fairly well managed for you already.
Yep.
Okay, what has been your favorite sailing destinations? Asks Father Tech.
It's been so long since I've been there that it's becoming like past history. But I remember, for like the 6 years after I left that area, I would always answer Panama, both coasts. I just really like Panama, and we're hoping to get back down to Panama. After this hurricane season, if it looks like it's good to travel down there, we'll probably go down there. Maybe we'll go back to the Bahamas for a while first, because it's right over there, and God, we need a clean water fix. We haven't.
Yeah.
We've swam in swimming pools. We haven't swam in the around the boat in a year.
Yeah, we need to get out and do some day trips and some shakedown stuff before we leave here. That'll be nice.
True. And
But
the
yeah,
Bahamas
it was-
is almost a day trip shakedown.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, because it's downwind, isn't it?
Yeah, it's downwind. It's not anything like coming here. And we've got sails now.
Yeah, we have sails.
Yeah.
That always helps when you have a mainsail, right? But yeah, the Bahamas are really nice, and it's like sailing in a giant swimming pool, and you can jump overboard and see some great fish and all kinds of stuff. People who eat seafood, you know, they can go down and grab a lobster and have dinner. Makes it really easy. What did you like about Panama? Care to elaborate?
Oh,
What
let's
part
see.
of Panama? It's kind of a big place.
Yeah, it's kind of a big place.
Especially if you're on a boat.
Well, on the Caribbean side, you've got the San Blas Islands. If you were to go to a bookstore, if they still have such things, and get a calendar of sailboats, if they still have such things, and look at all the pretty pictures, you would say, oh, that's like Polynesia, that's whatever. Look down at the bottom. Almost all of them are San Blas. It's so beautiful there. I spent 3 months there. That was really nice. The other side is the Pacific, and the Pacific, like I said, the waves are longer. It's easier to move around. There just never seemed to be any. Well, I guess we had some tropical waves come through, and that was kind of rough. But generally, it wasn't like this blowing 30 thing that happens all the time in the Caribbean. It was just mellow. You needed a light wind performing boat, or you motored. But it seemed to be just enough wind for temptress. Very often, I would travel someplace with another boat, that leaving on the same day. We're not buddy boating exactly, and I'd get up late, and they're motoring along, and I'd sail by them and heckle them on the radio, saying, "Come on, put your sail up," but I would actually pass them under sail. It was just enough wind, and never was like this fight. It just kind
Better
of
sailing
idyllic.
conditions.
Yeah.
What you liked about it.
Yeah, it was really rolly in the bays because of these long waves. They would wrap around any protected headland, and Temptress is really bad for that. She's narrow and roundy on the bottom, which makes her performance see well, but she will just start rocking.
Is Panama a very expensive place to cruise?
My information is so old.
I know the
didn't
food
seem
wasn't too, but
expensive.
we did a video about a year ago with several other sailing channels, including Distant Shores, if you know who that is, and they reported in from Panama. We had people reporting from all over about the prices of food, and I seem to remember that their food budget and their food expenses weren't very bad at all. Of course, everywhere you go, there are super nice, shiny 5-star marinas that you can stay at, or you can anchor out if it's an appropriate place to do that. So there's a lot of fluctuation in
Sure.
just your. There are people who cruise in the Bahamas and spend 5 times as much as we spend. So a lot of it boils down to the.
Well, if you load it up with food
Style.
in Cologne or Panama City or whatever, it's all Panama City. If you take a taxi probably into Cologne, from Cologne. Cologne's, at least when I was there, wasn't the greatest spot. But if you went into big grocery stores and loaded up on your groceries and then went to the San Blas, there's like almost nothing. Well, again, my information's old, but at the time there was. You could buy, the Kunas would make bread, and you could buy fish from them, but that was it. There wasn't any place to spend money. So those 3 months, obviously we paid for the food beforehand, but it's not like we were going out and buying beers because there weren't any.
And that's kind of our style of cruising. So for us, no, it shouldn't be very expensive.
Yeah. They talk about $0 days. These were $0 months.
Frank says, gives me a headache to hear that Clark is the only one who knows how to charge lithium batteries. Why? What is going on with the industry?
Okay, I've got to balance this between I want to talk about this and I don't want to bore people. But way back when I first bought this boat and set it up, one company was making a good battery charger for lead that did it right. And honestly, it's pretty close to what you have to do for lithium. You don't charge your batteries up to a voltage and then hold them there for an amount of time, which is kind of arbitrary, and then go down to flow. You want to charge the batteries up to a voltage and then hold them there until the amps required to hold them there comes down to a certain point, then you know they're charged. So if you take a set of fully charged lead batteries and start your engine up, your engine's regulator is going to run through a charge cycle maybe for 2 hours, and you're overcharging them. Now lead can handle that. Lithium cannot handle being overcharged, and you would think that the answer to that is come up to a voltage and now that's how much they're charged, but that's not how it works at all. You can overcharge lithium at 13.5 volts. If you trickle charge it, you can destroy the battery at 13.5 volts. So there is this formula, it becomes a little complicated, but we've done this math and done this work with the best information we have.
With a special patented process.
Well, it's a three-dimensional array. There's a lot going on to it. But so it's this map, and it boils down to if you would like your battery to be 85% charged, because if you charge less than the whole way, you get longer life. If you want your battery to be 85% charged, there's this curve. I'll do the curve backwards here, where at a given amp flow, a certain voltage means that it's fully charged. So if you're flowing low amps, it's actually a low voltage that means fully charged. And if you're really hammering it, it's a pretty high voltage before it's fully charged, because it's jamming it in there. And putting all that together lets you say it's fully charged. And then the other thing, even my simplest one does, is if you charge up, this is pretty simple logic, but if you charge the system in the simple way, just up to a voltage, it won't go through another charge cycle until it's seen that battery actually get discharged a bit. It sounds so obvious, but if you charge your batteries up with solar and then the cloud comes over for 2 hours and you have a rainstorm, well, when the sun comes back out, your solar regulator, the batteries came down, your solar regulator will say, oh, it's morning, and it'll take you through a whole charge cycle again. Well, they're fully charged. Anyway, okay, enough of that. That's the thing. That's what I'm doing that's different.
Got all that? Did you take notes? Okay,
I'm doing everything that I can. If I find a way to make it better, I make the circuit better. Sparing no effort or expense to do it as right as I can
right.
find rightness to be.
Intentionally.
So I'm trying to do the best for everybody.
Would you ever be interested in taking a cruise, or would you rather just stay on your own boat?
Like a cruise ship?
I guess that's the...
No.
Probably.
Oh, no.
No.
12-inch diesel fuel line. How can I hold my head up and say I'm more environmental than you if I ever took a cruise?
Oh, I see. That's why.
Yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
No, it just doesn't appeal to me. It's just
so
not
have
my
you ever
thing.
been on a cruise?
No.
I didn't know that. I went on a cruise in high school with my family, and I enjoyed it. Okay, but if I think back now to try to remember the locations and the ports that we went to, I couldn't tell you. I remember some of them, but we spent one day doing something that was often pre-programmed by the cruise ship company, and we got kind of ushered, livestock to where we were supposed to go, and then we had to be back at a certain time, and it was one of those things when you go on vacation and everything is sort of scheduled and put together for you versus going somewhere and taking your time and deciding, I like it here, let's spend a few more days here. It's just a different style of, it's a vacation thing, and this isn't really a vacation to us. This is just how we live our life.
It's easier,
so it's
for sure.
Yeah.
Here's my cruise ship story. I'm sailing across, I don't remember now, the Caribbean someplace, and this cruise ship passes me in the night on my bow by a good distance. I just see all of its lights as it passes me. And then the sun starts coming up, and by the time I crossed its wake, it's miles away, but I crossed its wake as the sun's just coming up, and I crossed this line of black plastic garbage bags just going forever. Somebody on that cruise ship got up in the morning before the guests could see anything and just started chucking the garbage off the stern, because they have to pay for their garbage disposal by the pound when they get wherever they're going. So that kind of, and you know how much garbage is generated on one of those things, and it just seriously in both directions, as far as I could see, a line of black plastic bags.
So, book your next cruise now.
Yeah.
Deborah says cruise is like a prison. I saw someone make a video on a cruise ship and it sounded like a stadium. It was very stadium-like when you're there. You kind of feel like a little ant. You have to report to dinner at your particular time window in order to get food. it was nice if you want to just do nothing. It reminded me of like if you've seen that movie Wall-E, that's kind of like what being on a cruise is like in terms of the actual ship part. It's like everybody does this now, then everybody does this now. Report to the Lido deck. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure some people enjoy it, but it's not really for us. Hello from Italy, says Brian R. Have you experienced or heard of issues with unmarried couples residing together in a Muslim country? We are considering getting rings to present ourselves as married. Are you talking about being on a boat in a Muslim country or anywhere at all? Been on a nice Caribbean cruise, stupid
I
expensive.
was worried about this when I first took off with my previous wife because we weren't married yet. And it had we didn't know if Central America and South America would have, need for our documentation.
Mm-hmm.
I think nobody carries their wedding license. If you
Well,
say you're married, you're married.
Well, and there's plenty of people who travel with crew members that aren't married.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the difference would
Well, like I base this
Nobody's
on
gonna
old
say how
movies.
many
I
beds
wasn't
are on your
around,
boat.
but yeah, I mean it was a thing in old movies. Like the hotel, a detective wouldn't let you
sure.
stay there if you didn't have a marriage license or some proof of. If you didn't think you were married, you couldn't have a room together.
be. Sure.
But
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that's well over. But I don't know. I wouldn't put anything past anybody that's like religious.
Yeah.
So.
And we probably don't really have much interest in traveling to Muslim countries at this point anyway. So, yeah, I don't know. But considering getting rings to present yourselves as married, sure. Sure. Before we were
I'm not
married,
wearing mine now because she hasn't made one for me in a while.
sorry.
But show your ring
It's
off.
difficult. It's difficult to make our wedding rings, which are made out of string. So we do have wedding rings, and we have the same last name.
It takes an hour or so to make one, but it takes like no money. It's just a
Yeah.
piece of string.
But since we started cruising together, we've always just referred to each other as my husband and my wife, even if it wasn't applicable at the time, because it was just easier shorthand for people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't really matter. Call yourselves what you want. Oh, it sounded like a stadium. Somebody said someone made a video on a cruise ship and it sounded like a stadium. Yes,
All
indeed,
that
it's
cheering
loud.
and
Yeah.
noisy and
Been on a nice Caribbean cruise, stupid expensive by the time it's all done. Could have done a private yacht charter for the same end cost, possibly. Yeah.
But then you'd have to make a decision for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Joe says it's okay with me if you fill a couple hours with battery talk. What BMS do you guys use so far? I've been happy with my Renogy, I think, but I'm sure there are better more expensive units out there.
On the main battery bank, I've got whatever Battleborn puts in theirs. Battleborn's BMSs. At the time, I got a really good deal on some very gently, actually never used Battleborns, and they were the hot thing at the time. Were I to do it now, I would definitely assemble the system. This guy down here has, I don't know, maybe I'll put a link up someplace sometime. When we do the video on that thing, I'll definitely show it. It just got good recommendations. Honestly, I never tested it. I've never charged it up to the point where the BMS goes off. I look at a BMS as something that it just ain't that hard to build. You'd have to be really a bad engineer to make a bad one. It doesn't cost more to make it right, really. So I trust it. I have had a crappy Chinese one, and that didn't go out so good, but mostly because it itself was just a mess. This one's pleasant to look at and touch. So I'm not too terribly concerned with it. Now, my friend Conrad, who's got the guy that has that junk rig boat we showed a while ago, that you've got to keep, I don't know, you guys have no way of pressuring him, but they have to clean up their boat so we can do a tour of it. It's a cool boat. He just put in a system, and his BMS is amazing. It hooks to his cell phone and hooks to another bit of instrumentation over radio waves and gives him all kinds of reports. And that was kind of cool. I don't think it's necessary. I want to set up everything to do with batteries so that you just stop thinking about them. They should be autonomous. They should take care of themselves. You shouldn't have to have reports on things. With a lithium battery bank, it would be nice maybe once a year or so to do a top balance. That would be kind of good if you're into lithium, you know what I'm talking about, and if you're not, don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, and I did put an active balancer in this thing. So it can actually, once it gets fully charged or really low charge where the cells kind of split apart a little bit, it can actually take power from one cell and put it right into another instead of just burning it as heat. because I didn't want that box generating a lot of heat at its ends. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
there you
We
go.
won't
There's
literally
way too
spend
much
2
about
hours
batteries.
talking about 'em. Okay, so 2 more. Last 2 questions. We are from France and enjoy your life
Bonjour, comment ça
inspire
va?
us a lot. Will you project to come to Europe by sailing one day? I don't think we're gonna sail to Europe.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. You've been sailing a long time. And
I
we've
could
talked
slip
about
through the
this.
canal again and go the other way, but yeah,
But that doesn't mean we wouldn't
Europe
ever
is about
visit
airplanes,
Europe. Yeah,
right?
we'd probably get on a plane and just live in Europe for a while and
yeah.
move around.
Yeah,
In which case, we will post on YouTube and hopefully connect with all of you while we're there.
Sure.
Because we know people now in Sweden and apparently Scotland and other places.
Uh-huh.
So maybe we'll have to make a trip out of it.
You know, the dropping the mast and going through the canals sounds interesting, but for a long time I couldn't, because when the EU got together, the way that you basically had to pay tax on the boat. But after a few years, they kind of settled in. And used to be what you did is you just kept changing countries, so you never had to pay tax. But then when the EU came together, you couldn't pull that trick anymore. But some years after, that they finally cleaned up the law a bit and said, well, if your boat's over a certain age, you don't have to. Well, Temptress is old as hell. So.
Yeah, it's nice to be old, isn't it?
Yeah. Also, just as a little thing about old boats, they don't tell you this in the state of Florida, but it's like really expensive to register your boat every year. But if you register your boat and then go through the procedure to make it an official antique, Temptress is an antique, it costs us less per year. We keep this boat registered because it costs like $3 a year to keep it registered now. And if I ever sell her, there's no sales tax. So I'll look into their antique boat system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so she's an official antique in the state of Florida.
Somebody says Thailand, ? Thailand was actually on our list for a while
Definitely is.
for post-sailing. The language thing is, we talked to somebody recently who would spend a lot of time in Thailand, and they said they really enjoyed it, but the language barrier made it really difficult. And it's from what their opinion was, it was a somewhat difficult language to learn, and culturally it's different. I don't know how much of an expat community there is. That always seems to help.
Sure.
But
Yeah, I definitely want to do a Southeast Asia tour, but it'll involve an airplane.
definitely. Okay, last point regarding the garbage. John was in the Navy. Trash was placed in paper bags and tossed overboard at night. Trash was supposed to be anything that can break down. Problem was the trash cans always had plastics. I think probably means plastics in them. Yeah, there is a protocol for the things that you can throw overboard. If you grind down paper and stuff to a certain size, you can throw it overboard a mile offshore. Sometimes it's more than that, and more than that. There's a little plaque that is on most boats.
Well, you got it. It's legal. You have to carry the plaque. But the cruise ship also has to carry the plaque. They just weren't respecting it. Those plastic bags, I don't know what was in them, but they were floating and they were plastic, and they were a lot of them. Just the plastic bags, the bags themselves probably weighed 50 pounds. There were so many of them.
Right. And let's see, so like glass jars will break down into sand eventually.
Really, eventually.
Eventually, yeah. But don't,
Yeah,
do harm and stuff like that.
people are going to hate me for this, but I will throw glass in deep water where nobody's going to dive down and look at it as a human. I have no problem throwing things that sink that are that kind of mineral, basically.
Just the raw materials, right?
Like a glass bottle. Now, it'll go down and it'll be there for like ever. But some little animal comes up to it and it's like, score! I got a place to hide from the predators. It's not
Well,
really...
he won't be hiding. They'll still see
Yeah, look at you.
to taunt the predators. Taunt the predators. Yeah, but it's all, you have to weigh all that out.
But, never do we put any plastic in the water. Never do we put anything that would... Like, we'll throw foodstuffs overboard out at sea. That floats, but, some bird or something comes along and says score. But nothing coming off Temptress ever floats up on the beach in any way and becomes a problem.
And a lot of people will burn garbage on the beach.
Yeah.
That's a practical solution.
True, we do that. We've done that where we had too much garbage and it was months before we got back to a place. So we take it to the beach and we burn it down. And while we're there, because the hotter your fire is, the more it'll burn, we collect all the plastic we can find and burn it all down. And
Which
then we
isn't
actually
a-
take the slag that won't burn and we take it back. And it becomes
it's
part
like
of the next fire.
Condenses it, yeah. Which, obviously it's not ideal to burn plastic and things like that, but the sheer amount of garbage that's on some of these beaches it washes up, there's no other practical way to do it.
Yeah.
We would have to fill the entire boat with old flip-flops. What else? Lots of shoes.
And then what happens?
Lots
You
of
know, we
shoes.
take it someplace, and,
And
they're
then-
either going to landfill it or burn
yeah,
it.
and here they
And
burn it.
landfills aren't forever, and plastic is forever. So eventually, it's going to get out again. So burning it is just get it done with.
All right. I think that's it. We have a potluck here in a little while, so I'm going to make a bunch of waffles on the waffle iron because we didn't have a lot of food to contribute, but we have a lot of flour, so
Okay.
we'll make some eggs and flour and make some waffles, which will be fun. Yeah. Oh, the follow-up. Navy does night drops of trash in case of food that may float, attracting birds. It gives the ship time to get away from the food trail, which should lead to the ship.
Yeah. Birds
makes
tell you a
sense.
lot at sea. If you ever see a whole bunch of birds, there's probably some fish doing a bait ball where they're
Yeah.
trying to get food together, and the birds see it. So if you ever are making a crossing and you see a whole bunch of birds going crazy,
Go drag a line
throw some fishing lines in the water, and you get to have a couple too.
and watch out for whales.
Yeah, I once came right up close and got a really great experience with a rather large whale shark.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really special.
More sailing stories.
Yeah, the same story.
Alrighty, I think we're going to sign off for today. You can leave your questions. If you don't get your question typed in the chat before we stop the stream, you can pop it down in the comment section below, and we will try to get to it like we always do. We try to answer, mostly this guy here, is going through comments every day and answering any of them that warrant a response. We have a pretty engaged
Yeah.
comment section, I think.
Yeah.
I think.
And it's only 1 in 100 that is like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Well, okay. Why did you feel? Do you feel it was necessary? Or the one I have been getting a lot is, coaxial cable's not wire. Stop saying wire. Do you feel better now? Do you feel better now that you've vented that?
Yeah, we do have. So it's an interesting line to walk, especially when you're making educational content for YouTube. Like I think one time I said I was going downstairs instead of below decks, and I was like, not everybody knows what below decks means, or is this a rope or a line? Well, once it has a job, it's a line, but I can call it a rope up until that point. So, anyway, we try to walk that line, so to speak. Yeah, so leave us some nice comments, and we'll leave you some nice responses. Thanks, everybody. Cheers. Some people are saying goodbye. We'll talk to you next month, and we'll keep putting out videos for you. Thank you. Again, if you have follow-up questions and you're one of our patrons, send us a message. We're happy to connect with you that way. And otherwise, we'll sign off for now.
You wanted to go back to, yeah.
Oh, let's play the video for you again, so you get the theme song stuck in your head all day. There you go. All right, bye, everybody.
When we met, we knew that we did things differently, but with no regrets, both living life authentically. So we packed up this antique boat to make a life upon the sea. For the worse and for the better, to live a life full of adventure. Living simply on our own, powered by the sea and sky. Anchor down to be with friends, anchor up to say goodbye. Traveling on the winds of change, we're gonna make it, you and I. Enduring winds and stormy weather, to live a life full of adventure. Some days it's easy, other days it's tough. Just finding our way and fixing all of our broken stuff. And we don't have many things, but we have enough to live this adventure.